Maria Santos had been working in the army kitchen for 3 years. She was 24 years old and came from a poor family in the countryside. The military job was her only way to support her sick mother and younger brother back home. Every morning at 5 o'clock, Maria would arrive at the base kitchen. She prepared meals for over 200 soldiers. Her hands moved quickly as she chopped vegetables, stirred large pots of soup, and cleaned endless stacks of dishes. The work was hard, but Maria never complained. The soldiers respected Maria. She was kind, but strong. When new recruits felt homesick, she would give them extra food and a gentle smile. When officers demanded impossible tasks, Maria found ways to make things work. She earned trust through her dedication. Colonel Thompson had been watching Maria for months. He was 50 years old, tall and intimidating. His uniform was always perfect, and his boots shined like mirrors. Other soldiers feared him because of his cruel punishments and violent temper. The colonel noticed how the other soldiers liked Maria. They laughed at her jokes during meal times. They asked about her family. They treated her with respect that the colonel felt only he deserved. This made him angry and jealous. One Tuesday morning, Maria was carrying a heavy tray of food to the dining hall. The colonel stepped directly into her path. The tray crashed to the ground, spilling hot soup everywhere. Plates shattered across the floor. "Look what you've done," the colonel shouted. "You clumsy girl. This is what happens when we hire peasants who don't belong here." Maria's face turned red, but she kept her voice calm. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't see you there. I'll clean this up right away." The colonel's eyes narrowed. "You'll do more than clean it up. You'll prepare a new meal for everyone, and you'll stay late tonight to wash every dish twice." Maria nodded and began picking up the broken pieces. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. She was angry that the colonel had deliberately blocked her way and then blamed her for the accident. That evening, while Maria worked alone in the kitchen, the colonel appeared again. He watched her scrub the large pots with a strange smile on his face. "You work hard," he said. "Maybe too hard for such a pretty girl." Maria didn't look up from her work. "I just want to do my job, sir. Your job could be much easier," the colonel said, stepping closer. "I could arrange for lighter duties, better pay, maybe even a promotion." Maria finally looked at him. She saw something in his eyes that made her stomach turn. "Thank you, sir, but I'm happy with my current position." The colonel's smile disappeared. "You should think carefully about opportunities when they are offered. Not everyone gets a second chance." After he left, Maria continued washing dishes, but her mind was racing. She had heard whispers from other women who worked on the base, stories about the colonel's special offers and what happened to those who refused them. Maria made a decision that night. She would not be another victim. She would not let the colonel destroy her life or her dignity. But she also knew she had to be smart about it. The next morning, Maria arrived early as usual. She prepared breakfast with extra care, making sure everything was perfect. When the soldiers came for their meals, she served them with her usual kindness. The colonel entered the dining hall and looked directly at Maria. He expected to see fear in her eyes. Instead, he saw determination. This only made him more interested in breaking her spirit. Maria continued her work, knowing that the colonel was planning something worse. She had grown up poor and learned to survive difficult situations. Her father had taught her that bullies only respected strength. As days passed, the colonel found excuses to visit the kitchen more often. He criticized Maria's cooking, moved things so she would trip, and made impossible demands. Each time Maria remained professional and calm, the other soldiers began to notice the colonel's behavior. They saw how he treated Maria differently from other workers. Some wanted to help, but they were afraid of the colonel's power. Others whispered among themselves, waiting to see what would happen. Maria knew she was walking on dangerous ground. The colonel was becoming more aggressive each day. His accidents were getting worse and his threats were becoming clearer. But Maria had survived poverty, discrimination, and countless hardships before joining the army. She had learned that sometimes the only way to stop a bully was to show them you weren't afraid to fight back. The colonel didn't know that Maria had grown up with 3 older brothers who taught her how to defend herself. He didn't know that she had worked in factories where she learned to handle dangerous situations with quick thinking. Most importantly, the colonel didn't know that Maria had been documenting every incident, every threat, and every witness. She was building a case, waiting for the right moment to act. The kitchen became a battlefield where only one person could win. Maria knew that her next move would determine not just her future, but possibly her survival. The colonel was about to learn that he had chosen the wrong person to target. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shock everyone on the base and change Maria's life forever. 3 weeks after the first incident, Colonel Thompson's behavior became more dangerous. He started finding reasons to call Maria to his office. Each time, he would close the door and make her stand while he sat behind his large wooden desk. "Your work has been sloppy lately," he would say, even though everyone knew Maria was the best kitchen worker on the base. "You need extra training." During these meetings, the colonel would move closer to Maria. He would touch her shoulder when pointing at papers. He would brush against her when walking around the desk. Maria felt sick each time, but she knew complaining would only make things worse. Maria started arriving at work with bruises on her arms. When her friend Carmen asked about them, Maria said she had fallen down the stairs at her boarding house. Carmen didn't believe the story, but Maria begged her not to ask questions. The colonel began timing his visits to the kitchen when Maria was alone. Early morning before other staff arrived late evening. After everyone left, he would stand too close and speak in a low voice. That made Maria's skin crawl. "You know, Maria," he said one evening while she cleaned the stoves, "I've been thinking about your family. Your mother is sick, isn't she? Medical bills must be expensive." Maria's hand stopped moving. Her mother needed surgery that the family couldn't afford. Only the colonel would know this information from her employment file. "I could arrange for additional financial assistance," the colonel continued. "The Army has special funds for hardship cases. Of course, these decisions require personal recommendation from senior officers." Maria turned around slowly. "What kind of recommendation, sir?" The colonel smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "The kind that requires gratitude. The kind that shows you understand how things work here." Maria felt her heart pounding. "I'm grateful for my job, sir. I work hard every day to show my appreciation." "Working hard isn't enough," the colonel said, stepping closer. "Loyalty means being willing to do whatever is necessary to support your superior officers." That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She thought about her mother lying in the hospital bed getting weaker. Each day, she thought about her brother who was still in school and depended on her income. She also thought about what the colonel expected in exchange for his help. The next morning, Maria made a phone call to her brother. "How is Mama?" she asked. "The doctors say she needs surgery soon," her brother replied. "But we still don't have enough money." Maria closed her eyes. "Don't worry, I'll find a way." When Maria arrived at work, she found a note on her station. "See me in my office at 18,800 hours. Come alone, Colonel Thompson." Maria crumpled the note and threw it away. She spent the day preparing meals, but her mind was elsewhere. She noticed several soldiers watching her with concerned looks. Word was spreading that something was wrong. Sergeant Rodriguez, a kind older man who had always been respectful to Maria, approached her during lunch service. "Maria, if you ever need help with anything, you can talk to me. I have a daughter your age." Maria wanted to cry, but she just nodded and continued serving food. At 6 o'clock, Maria knocked on the colonel's office door. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was steady when she said, "You wanted to see me, sir?" The colonel was sitting in a comfortable chair, not behind his desk. This time, he patted the chair next to him. "Sit here, Maria. We need to discuss your future." Maria remained, standing near the door. "I prefer to stand, sir." The colonel's expression darkened. "I said, sit down." Maria moved to the chair, but didn't sit. The colonel stood up and walked toward her. "I've been very patient with you, Maria. More patient than I am with most people. I appreciate your patience, sir. Do you?" The colonel reached out and touched Maria's face. "Because your actions don't show appreciation. They show disrespect." Maria stepped back, but the colonel grabbed her wrist. "Your mother's surgery could be scheduled for next week. The Army Medical Fund could cover all expenses. Your family would never have to worry about money again." Maria tried to pull her wrist free, but the colonel's grip tightened. "All you have to do is show me proper respect. The kind of respect that builds strong relationships between officers and their staff. So, please let go of my arm," Maria said firmly. The colonel pulled her closer. "You're not in a position to make demands, girl. You're here because I allow it. Your family survived because I permit it." Maria looked directly into the colonel's eyes. "And what happens if I refuse your offer?" The colonel's smile became cruel. "Accidents happen in military kitchens. People get injured. Sometimes they can't work anymore. Sometimes they have to leave the base immediately without references or final pay." Maria understood the threat perfectly. The colonel was telling her that he would hurt her and destroy her livelihood if she didn't submit to his demands. "I need time to think about this," Maria said carefully. The colonel released her wrist but blocked her path to the door. "You have until tomorrow evening. Same time, same place. Come, prepared to show me your decision." Maria walked back to her room with her mind racing. She had 24 hours to make a choice that would affect her entire life. Submit to the colonel's demands and save her family, or refuse and face the consequences. That night, Maria sat on her bed and wrote a letter to her brother. She told him she loved him and their mother. She told him to be strong no matter what happened. She sealed the letter and put it in her drawer. Then, Maria made her decision. She would not be the colonel's victim. Whatever happened tomorrow, she would face it on her own terms. The colonel had made a serious mistake in thinking that desperation would make her weak. Maria began preparing for a battle she knew she might not survive. The next evening came too quickly. Maria spent the entire day working with unusual focus, as if every task might be her last. Her fellow kitchen workers noticed her strange behavior, but didn't dare ask questions. At 5:30, Maria washed her hands one final time and walked toward the colonel's office. Her legs felt heavy, but her resolve was strong. She had made peace with whatever would happen next. The colonel was waiting with the door already open. "Right on time," he said with satisfaction. "I appreciate punctuality." Maria entered the office and heard the door close behind her. The sound felt like a prison cell locking. The colonel had dimmed the lights and moved his desk chair to face a small sofa. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday." The colonel began, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. "I believe we can reach a mutually beneficial arrangement." Maria remained standing, with her back straight. "I've been thinking too, sir." "Good. Then you understand that cooperation is in everyone's best interest." The colonel set down his glass and moved toward Maria. "Your mother's surgery can happen next week. Your brother can attend the best school in the capital. Your family's problems will disappear." "And what about my problems?" Maria asked quietly. The colonel laughed. "Your problems are my problems now. I'll take care of everything." He reached out to touch Maria's shoulder. This time she didn't step away. The colonel interpreted this as acceptance and moved closer. His hands moved to her waist. "That's better," he whispered. "You're learning to be reasonable." Maria looked directly into his eyes. "Colonel Thompson, I want you to remember this moment." "Remember what?" he asked, confused by her tone. "Remember that I gave you a chance to stop?" Before the colonel could respond, Maria grabbed his wrist with both hands and twisted hard. The colonel gasped in pain and tried to pull away, but Maria had learned this move from her brothers years ago. "What are you doing?" the colonel shouted. Maria released his wrist and stepped back. "I'm refusing your offer." The colonel's face turned red with anger. "You stupid girl. Do you know what you've just done?" "Yes," Maria said calmly. "I've made my choice." The colonel rubbed his wrist and moved toward the door to lock it. You've made the wrong choice. Now, you'll learn what happens to people who disrespect me. Maria watched him turn the lock and knew there was no going back. The colonel was bigger and stronger, but Maria had something he didn't expect. She was no longer afraid. The colonel advanced toward her with his hands clenched into fists. I tried to be generous. I offered you everything your family needed, but you're too stupid to recognize opportunity. I recognize it. Perfectly, Maria replied. I also recognize a predator. The colonel's first swing was clumsy because he was angry. Maria ducked and moved to the side. Her brothers had taught her that angry fighters make mistakes. Hold. Still, the colonel shouted, swinging again. Maria dodged again and grabbed a heavy brass paperweight from his desk. Stay away from me, the colonel laughed. You think you can threaten me? I am a colonel in this army. You are nothing. He lunged forward, trying to grab the paperweight from Maria's hand. In the struggle, they both fell against the desk. Papers scattered everywhere, and the lamp crashed to the floor. Maria rolled away and got to her feet first. The colonel was slower because of his size and age. When he stood up, Maria saw something in his expression that terrified her. This wasn't just anger anymore. This was the look of a man who intended to hurt her badly. The colonel reached for his belt and pulled it off in one smooth motion. I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget. He swung the belt toward Maria's face. She raised her arms to block it and felt the leather strap across her forearms. The pain was sharp, but it also made her angry. Fight back, Maria. She heard her oldest brother's voice in her memory. Don't just defend. Attack when they don't expect it. The colonel raised the belt again, but this time Maria didn't back away. Instead, she stepped forward and grabbed a leather strap with both hands. The colonel tried to pull it back, but Maria held on tight. They were now face to face, both pulling on the belt. The colonel was stronger, but Maria was quicker and more determined. She suddenly let go of the belt, causing the colonel to stumble backward. As he tried to regain his balance, Maria saw her opportunity. The colonel's weight was on his back foot, and he was leaning against his desk for support. Maria had grown up poor, but she had also grown up tough. Her family had survived by being smart and strong when necessary. The colonel was about to learn that he had chosen the wrong person to victimize. The office had become a battleground, and Maria was no longer just defending herself. She was fighting for her dignity, her future, and the safety of every other woman who might face the same situation. The colonel straightened up and looked at Maria with pure hatred. You want to play rough? Fine, I'll show you what rough really means. But Maria was no longer the frightened kitchen worker who had knocked on his door 30 minutes ago. She was a woman who had decided to fight back no matter what the cost. The real confrontation was about to begin. The colonel threw his belt aside and moved toward Maria with his hands outstretched. His face was twisted with rage, and Maria could see that he intended to hurt her seriously. You want to fight me? He snarled. I've been in 3 wars. I've killed men with my bare hands. Maria backed toward the window but kept her eyes on the colonel. I don't want to fight you. I just want you to leave me alone. Too late for that now, the colonel said, reaching for her throat. You should have taken my generous offer. Maria ducked under his arms and moved to the other side of the room. The office wasn't large, and she was running out of space. The colonel was blocking the door, and the window was too high to reach. The colonel advanced slowly like a predator, cornering its prey. There's nowhere to run, Maria. This room is soundproof. No one can hear you scream. Maria's heart was pounding, but her mind remained clear. She remembered her brother Carlos teaching her about fighting bigger opponents. Use their size against them, he had said. Big men fall harder when they lose their balance. The colonel lunged forward again, trying to grab Maria around the waist. She sidestepped and pushed him as hard as she could. The colonel stumbled, but didn't fall. Instead, he spun around and backhanded Maria across the face. The slap was so hard that Maria saw stars. She tasted blood in her mouth and felt her lips swelling. But instead of crying or begging, Maria wiped the blood away and looked at the colonel with determination. "Is that all you've got?" she asked. The colonel's eyes widened with surprise. He had expected her to break down or plead for mercy. Instead, Maria was standing straighter and looking more defiant than before. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." The colonel growled. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with," Maria replied. "Hey, coward who uses his power to hurt women because he can't earn respect any other way." The colonel's face turned purple. With rage, he charged at Maria like a bull, intending to tackle her to the ground. This was the moment Maria had been waiting for. As the colonel rushed toward her, Maria stepped to the side at the last second. The colonel's momentum carried him forward, and he crashed into the wall behind where Maria had been standing. The impact was loud and the colonel groaned in pain. He turned around slowly, rubbing his shoulder. "You little witch," he said. "I'm going to make you pay for that." But Maria saw something different in his eyes now. Along with the anger, there was also uncertainty. The colonel was beginning to realize that this fight wasn't going the way he had planned. Maria moved to the center of the room where she had more space to maneuver. The colonel approached more carefully this time, his hands held up like a boxer. "You can't keep running forever," he said. "Eventually, I'm going to catch you." "I'm not running anymore," Maria said firmly. The colonel swung his right fist toward Maria's head. She ducked and drove her knee upward, aiming for his stomach. The colonel doubled over, gasping for breath. While he was bent over, Maria grabbed a heavy glass trophy from a shelf. The colonel looked up just as Maria swung it toward his head. He raised his arm to block it, and the trophy shattered against his forearm. The colonel howled in pain and grabbed his injured arm. Maria could see blood seeping through his uniform sleeve. For the first time, the colonel looked genuinely afraid. "You crazy woman," he shouted. "You cut me." "Good," Maria said, breathing heavily. "Maybe now you'll understand how it feels to be hurt by someone stronger than you." The colonel backed toward his desk, still holding his bleeding arm. "This is assault on a superior officer. You'll go to prison for this, will I?" Maria asked. "Or will you explain to everyone how a small kitchen worker overpowered a big, strong colonel? How will that look on your record?" The colonel's expression changed as he realized Maria was right. His reputation would be destroyed if anyone found out what had happened in this office. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I want you to stay away from me," Maria said. "I want you to stop threatening my family, and I want you to leave every other woman on this base alone." The colonel leaned against his desk, still holding his wounded arm. "And if I don't agree?" Maria picked up another heavy object from the shelf. "Then we continued this conversation until you do agree." The colonel looked at Maria's determined face and realized he wasn't bluffing. This woman was prepared to fight him until one of them couldn't fight anymore. For the first time in his military career, Colonel Thompson was facing someone who refused to be intimidated. Maria had called his bluff and proved that his power had limits. The colonel was about to learn that those limits were much closer than he had ever imagined. But Maria wasn't finished with him yet. The real lesson was still to come. The colonel stood against his desk, bleeding and breathing heavily. He looked at Maria with a mixture of pain and disbelief. No one had ever fought back against him like this before. "You don't know who you're messing with," the colonel said, trying to regain his authority. "I have friends in high places. I can destroy your entire family with one phone call." Maria wiped blood from her own lip and stood straighter. "Then make the call, but explain to them how you got these injuries first." The colonel looked down at his bleeding arm and realized his uniform was torn and dainty. His perfect appearance was ruined, and there will be questions about what had happened. "People will believe whatever I tell them," the colonel said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Will they?" Maria asked. "Will they believe that a kitchen worker attacked you for no reason? Or will they start asking questions about why I was in your locked office after hours?" The colonel's face pulled as he understood the implications. If Maria's story came out, other women might come forward with similar experiences. His career would be over. "What do you want from me?" he asked again, this time with less arrogance. "I want you to transfer me to a different unit immediately," Maria said, "with full pay and good references. I want my family's medical expenses covered as promised, and I want you to never contact me again." The colonel started to object, but Maria raised a heavy candlestick she was still holding. "I'm not finished," she said firmly. The colonel closed his mouth and waited. "I also want you to remember that if anything happens to me or my family, I have friends who know exactly what kind of man you are. If I disappear or have an accident, they'll make sure everyone knows the truth about Colonel Thompson." This was actually a bluff. Maria hadn't told anyone about the colonel's harassment because she was afraid they wouldn't believe her. But the colonel didn't know this. The colonel nodded slowly. "Fine, I'll arrange your transfer tomorrow." "Good," Maria said. "Now unlock the door. I'm leaving." The colonel moved toward the door, but as he passed close to Maria, he suddenly grabbed her wrist with his good hand. "You think you're very clever?" he hissed. "But this isn't over." Maria tried to pull free, but the colonel's grip was strong despite his injury. "Let go of me," she demanded. Instead of releasing her, the colonel pushed Maria toward the wall. "You humiliated me," he said through clenched teeth. "No woman has ever done that to me before." Maria realized the colonel wasn't thinking clearly anymore. His pride was hurt worse than his arm, and he was acting on pure rage. This made him even more dangerous. The colonel pressed his body against Maria, pinning her to the wall. "I was going to be generous before. Now you'll get exactly what you deserve." Maria struggled, but the colonel was using his full weight to hold her in place. She could smell whiskey on his breath and see the madness in his eyes. "Please," Maria said, pretending to be defeated. "Don't hurt me anymore." The colonel smiled cruelly. "Now you want to beg. It's too late for that." But Maria's plea was another trick she had learned from her brothers, sometimes appearing weak-made. "Your opponent careless." The colonel loosened his grip slightly, thinking Maria had given up. Maria suddenly brought her knee up as hard as she could, driving it into the colonel's groin. The colonel gasped and stumbled backward, clutching himself in agony. As the colonel bent over in pain, Maria saw her opportunity for a finishing move. She remembered her brother Miguel showing her how to use an attacker's momentum against them. The colonel was still doubled over when Maria grabbed his shoulders and pulled him forward, while simultaneously raising her knee again. This time, her knee connected with the colonel's face, breaking his nose with a sickening crack. Blood poured from the colonel's nose as he staggered backward. He was dizzy and disoriented, waving his arms to keep his balance, but he was moving too fast and couldn't control his direction. Maria watched as the colonel stumbled toward his heavy wooden desk. His legs were tangled and he was falling backward. Maria could have stepped aside and let him fall safely to the floor. Instead, she made a split-second decision that would change everything. As the colonel fell past her, Maria stuck out her foot. The colonel's leg caught on Maria's extended foot, twisting his ankle and changing his trajectory. Instead of falling straight back, he fell to the side at an awkward angle. The colonel's leg hit the corner of his heavy desk with tremendous force. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the office like a gunshot. The colonel screamed in agony as his leg bent in a direction that no leg should ever bend. Maria stood over the colonel as he writhed on the floor, clutching his broken leg. Blood from his nose was mixing with tears of pain on his face. "My leg," the colonel moaned. "I think you broke my leg." Maria looked down at the man who had terrorized her for months. He looked pathetic lying there, no longer the powerful figure who had threatened her family. "Yes," Maria said calmly, "I think I did." The colonel tried to sit up, but the pain in his leg was too intense. "Help me," he pleaded. "Call for medical assistance." Maria walked to the colonel's desk and picked up his telephone. But instead of calling for help, she looked back at the broken man on the floor. The colonel, who had seemed so powerful and untouchable, was now completely helpless. The tables had turned completely, and Maria was the one in control. But her real test was still coming. In a few minutes, people would hear the colonel's screams and come to investigate. Maria would have to explain how a kitchen worker had broken the colonel's leg in his own office. The hardest part of Maria's fight was about to begin. Maria stood in the colonel's office, holding the telephone while the colonel writhed in pain on the floor. His screams were getting louder, and she knew someone would come to investigate soon. "Please," the colonel begged. "Call the medic. I need help." Maria looked down at him coldly. "Like you helped me when I asked you to leave me alone." Before the colonel could answer, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Someone was running toward the office. Maria quickly dialed the base medical emergency number. "This is Maria Santos and Colonel Thompson's office," she said calmly into the phone. "The colonel has been injured. Please send medical assistance immediately." The office door rattled as someone tried to open it, but it was still locked. "Colonel Thompson," a voice shouted from outside. "Are you all right, sir?" Maria recognized the voice of Sergeant Rodriguez, the kind older soldier who had offered to help her earlier. She walked to the door and unlocked it. Sergeant Rodriguez burst into the room with two other soldiers behind him. They stopped in shock when they saw the colonel on the floor with his leg bent at an impossible angle. "What happened here?" Sergeant Rodriguez demanded, looking from Maria to the colonel. The colonel tried to speak, but he was in too much pain to form clear words. Maria stepped forward. "The colonel attacked me," she said simply. "I defended myself." The other soldiers looked skeptical. How could a small kitchen worker injure a powerful colonel? But they could see Maria's swollen lip and the bruises on her arms. "She's lying," the colonel managed to gasp. "She attacked me. Arrest her." Sergeant Rodriguez knelt beside the colonel, but kept looking at Maria. Something about her calm demeanor and the colonel's obvious injuries didn't match the colonel's story. The medical team arrived within minutes. They immediately began treating the colonel's broken leg and nose. As they worked, more soldiers gathered in the hallway, drawn by the commotion. "Everyone, stay back," Sergeant Rodriguez ordered. "This is a crime scene until we understand what happened." Major Williams, the base commander, arrived as the medics were, preparing to transport the colonel to the hospital. He was a fair man who was respected by everyone on the base. "Explain the situation," Major Williams said to Sergeant Rodriguez. "Sir, we found Colonel Thompson on the floor with serious injuries. Miss Santos claims she acted in self-defense." Major Williams looked at Maria carefully. "Miss Santos, you're saying Colonel Thompson attacked you?" "Yes, sir," Maria replied. "He called me to his office after hours. He locked the door and made unwelcome advances. When I refused, he became violent." The colonel, who was now on a stretcher, tried to protest. "She's lying. She attacked me for no reason." Major Williams noticed the colonel's torn uniform, the scattered papers, and the broken glass on the floor. The office looked like a battlefield. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Major Williams said, "I want you to interview every person who might have information about this incident. Check Miss Santos's employment record and talk to anyone who has worked with both her and Colonel Thompson." As the medics carried the colonel away, he glared at Maria with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he whispered as they passed her. Major Williams heard the threat and made a note of it. "Miss Santos, you will need to come with me to give a full statement. You're not under arrest, but this incident requires a complete investigation." Over the next 3 days, the investigation revealed more than Major Williams had expected. Sergeant Rodriguez interviewed dozens of soldiers and base personnel. What he discovered shocked everyone. 7 other women came forward with similar stories about Colonel Thompson. They had all been too afraid to speak up before, but Maria's courage gave them strength. Carmen, Maria's friend from the kitchen, told investigators about Maria's mysterious bruises and strange behavior in recent weeks. She also revealed that Maria had been asking subtle questions about how to report harassment. Several male soldiers admitted they had suspected something was wrong, but hadn't known how to help. They testified about the colonel's inappropriate behavior and his threats against Maria's family. Most importantly, investigators found Colonel Thompson's personal files, which contained detailed information about female employees, families, and financial situations. This proved he had been targeting vulnerable women systematically. On the fourth day, Major Williams called Maria to his office. "Miss Santos, the investigation is complete. Colonel Thompson will face court-martial for sexual harassment, assault, and abuse of power." Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her. "What about his broken leg, sir?" "You acted in lawful self-defense," Major Williams said. "Colonel Thompson's injuries were the direct result of his own criminal behavior." Major Williams stood up and extended his hand to Maria. "I want to personally apologize for what you experienced under my command. We failed to protect you and the other women who came forward." Maria shook his hand. "Thank you for believing us, sir. There's more," Major Williams continued. "Your transfer request has been approved with a promotion and increase in pay. The Army will also cover all your mother's medical expenses as compensation for what you endured." 3 weeks later, Maria stood before a crowd of over 200 soldiers in the base's main courtyard. Major Williams had called a special assembly to address the Colonel Thompson incident. "Today, we honor someone who showed extraordinary courage," Major Williams announced. "Miss Maria Santos refused to be a victim. She fought back against injustice and made our entire base safer for everyone." The crowd applauded loudly. Many of the soldiers had heard the full story by now, and they respected Maria's courage. She had done what many of them had wanted to do, but were afraid to attempt. Maria stepped forward to address the assembly. Her voice was strong and clear as it carried across the courtyard. "I didn't fight Colonel Thompson because I was brave," she said. "I fought him because I had no other choice. He took away all my options except one. Stand up for myself or be destroyed." The soldiers listened intently. Many of them had never heard a woman speak so directly about such a serious situation. "I learned something important that night," Maria continued. "Bullies and predators only have power when we give it to them. When we refuse to be victims, they become weak and desperate." She looked across the crowd of faces. "Everyone deserves to work without fear. Everyone deserves respect regardless of their rank or position. When we see injustice, we must speak up even when it's difficult." The applause was even louder. This time, Sergeant Rodriguez stepped forward and saluted Maria, followed by dozens of other soldiers. It was an unprecedented show of respect from military personnel to a civilian worker. After the ceremony, Maria packed her belongings to leave for her new assignment. Her mother's surgery had been successful, and her brother was enrolled in a good school. The Army had kept all its promises. As Maria walked toward the transport vehicle, she passed a medical building where Colonel Thompson was still recovering from his broken leg. She could have felt sorry for him, but she didn't. He had made his choices, and now he was facing the consequences. 6 months later, Colonel Thompson was dishonorably discharged from the Army after his court-martial conviction. He lost his pension, his rank, and his reputation. The other women who had come forward received compensation and support for the harassment they had endured. Maria thrived in her new position at a different base. She was promoted to head of kitchen operations and became known for her fair treatment of all workers. She never forgot the lesson she learned that night in the colonel's office. Years later, when young women asked Maria for advice about dealing with workplace harassment, she would tell them her story. "Don't wait for someone else to save you," she would say. "Sometimes you have to save yourself." Maria's courage had a lasting impact far beyond that single confrontation. The Army implemented new policies to protect workers from harassment. Training programs were established to help people recognize and report inappropriate behavior. The story of the kitchen worker who broke a colonel's leg became legendary on military bases across the country. It served as both a warning to potential predators and an inspiration to potential victims. Maria Santos had proven that power doesn't always come from rank or position. Sometimes it comes from the simple refusal to accept injustice. Her fight in that office lasted less than an hour, but its effects will be felt for generations. The colonel had lifted his boot against her, expecting her to submit like all the others before her. Instead, Maria had broken his leg and his power over others. In doing so, she had also broken a cycle of abuse that had gone unchallenged for too long. Justice had been served not by the system, but by a brave woman who decided she deserved better than to be a victim. Maria's story became proof that sometimes the smallest person in the room can be the strongest when it matters most.